Hi, and welcome to this special edition of The Right Stuff. I'm the Queen, Parker J. Thanks so much for joining me. Now, dear listener, you know I have been talking and raving about this wonderful anthology called A Time for Everything, a speculative fiction anthology inspired by Ecclesiastes 3, and it's created and edited by Ben Avery from Onward and Upward Media. I have been talking to the authors of this series, and today I have another one, Sarah Frantz. She is the author of A Time to Tear. Dear listener, let me tell you, when you read A Time to Tear in this anthology, you are going to just enjoy the story. It has a Alice in Wonderland sort of take to it, but has much more depth. And I can't wait to dig into it with Sarah. So Sarah, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Parker. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be here with me today. I don't take it lightly. So thank you for being here. We're new besties. We just really learned about each other, talked to each other. Dear listener, poor Sarah had to listen to me for like 20 minutes before we even started recording. So
Oh, I
sorry for
enjoyed
you.
it. I enjoyed it.
But no, I'm just so glad you're here with me. And I want people to know a little bit about you before we delve into the story. So go ahead and tell us about yourself.
I am I raised five kids, four daughters and a son. I homeschooled most of the way through everybody. I have four daughters, yeah, like I said, and one son. So one son is totally different than all the daughters, and I was one of two sisters. So like I've learned a lot from my son. So anyway, my kids, all that to say, when they were in high school, they just loved the Super Marvels and all the movies. They would drag me to all those movies, and so like I got roped in, and I loved them too. I enjoyed them, and so I just wanted to write a book for my kids basically, and so that's where I got started on my writing adventure. And it took me 10 years to write the first novel I wrote, because I was homeschooling, teaching chemistry co-ops, doing all the things with my kids, sports, and so it took me a long time.
So tell me, how'd you find out about this project with Ben?
Oh, I met Ben Avery through Rachel Fehrenbach's Book Launch Collective. And that's how I got to know Ben. And I know Rachel through an online writing group and called Hope Writers. And she was doing her very first book launch collective, which was to support other Christian writers. And so she was trying to get somebody from each genre. So of course, Ben was a sci-fi with his new book, latest book that he had out. And so I read his book, and that's how I got to know Ben. And he invited me to be on this anthology, and I was just gobsmacked. I was just so grateful for the opportunity to be included.
We are part of something really big because this anthology, once it gains the traction, I think people are going to just eat it up because
I
it's such a unique idea.
Perfect idea. Just what a
Exactly.
God gift to Ben, and he just did a great
Exactly.
job. Yeah.
And I told him, and I've told several people, getting a bunch of authors to work together, just getting three maybe is hard.
Right.
He got 29 of us and working together. And like I told someone, it's like herding tie-dye cats. In your story, you're talking about the verse, a time to tear. What's the biblical connotation with this at first before you go into what your story goes into?
The biblical connotation of a time to tear. Sometimes things have to be torn apart or rendered before they can be remade. And I know it doesn't really fit, but I think of the potter with the potter's wheel, and that's not tearing, but sometimes even with the clay, they'll tear it apart to be able to squish it together better. And so that's a tearing. And I think of cloth. I know I also think of just the wine skin, and not putting new fresh wine in an old skin, and it will tear it, it will burst the seams. That would be a different connotation to that. But sometimes there is a time to tear. It is appropriate. And there's a time for when our emotions are torn. And in this world, that's going to happen a lot.
In your book, though, you chose to take a more whimsical approach to A Time to Tear. So, without giving away too many spoilers, what happens to Mary Rose at the beginning?
At Mary Rose at the beginning, she is learning to do her high dives, and she's not an athletic child, but she is a diver, and that's her athletic outlet. And so she has started diving classes, I think the previous year, and she is going to go dive off a spot off some cliffs where she's at a family reunion with her family. And she wants to do it at night when nobody's there to witness it, in case she just flops it. And she'd been jumping from the spot all day, and now she's about to do the dive.
And when she does the dive, something fantastical happens. She does the dive and she swims into space.
He does.
Like she sees the Milky Way, she sees galaxies. And at first, when I was reading, I'm like, well, where does she go? You know what I mean? Like, oh my, where is she at? What's wrong with the water? You know, something like that. But she
Yeah.
dives and
Yeah.
she has this very fantastical element. And what was really cool about this particular part is that as she's diving through space, her speed starts to accelerate and she starts to go faster and faster and faster. And the cosmos is just whirring past her, and I feel like, oh my gosh, please don't crash into an asteroid, you know. So I didn't want that to happen, you know. But then she comes to a place, and where does she come to?
She comes to kind of the outer darkness. Like in the Bible, you'll hear about the outer darkness. And so it's kind of a place of outer darkness. And it's a place where she's going to be confronting her innermost fears. And she's a very fearful child. And so part of the diving is about facing those fears. And we all have so many fears, and some are real, some aren't real. And so she's confronted with several fears through this story.
When you were coming up with the idea of this story, what was some of the background behind it?
Some of the background was that I wrote this specifically for my mom. So she was a child born in the 40s. So I have it set in the 50s, early 50s, and it mirrors her age. It mirrors the what she would have been exposed to. So like when I like to create a character, I like to go on Pinterest and I'll find things from that era or things that I'm studying or an article to help me with it. Because I don't know, I didn't live then. And I just love to get lost in the wormholes of studying little historical things. And so that's where I was going. And my mom is she's a writer. She has her master's in creative writing, and she's a published author. And she loves George MacDonald. She loves C.S. Lewis. So I was drawing from those fantastical elements that they often turn to and wrote through. So it doesn't really make sense. It's just crazy fantasy.
Without giving too many spoilers, she meets someone here. And who does
Yeah.
she meet at this place of outer darkness?
She meets Olivetti, a flying typewriter, who taps, because my mom's a writer. I was drawing on elements that would speak to her and so Olivetti is just a little old typewriter that existed back then and would have been a familiar thing in my mom's world as a child.
And so she for sure calls her Olive. And when she meets Olive, Olive is talking to her via the screen. Just like most authors, our keyboards talk to us too. It doesn't
Exactly.
matter that we are in the 21st century, writers' instruments talk to them.
And we love the clackety clack of the keyboard. I mean, that's just music to our ears.
So, Sarah, if people want to connect with you, where would they find you online?
They find me at sarahlfrantz.com. That'd be my website. I'm on Instagram, Sarah L. Frantz. I'm on Facebook, Sarah L. Frantz. You'll find me under that. That's me.
And dear listener, you're going to love it too. When you pick up your copy of A Time for Everything, a speculative fiction anthology inspired by Ecclesiastes, edited by Ben Avery. So go ahead, pick up your copy. I would suggest you get either the paperback or the hardcover because this is 500 pages. And I imagine you, dear listener, picking up this book, taking it with you, like if you're going to be sitting at, I don't know, an doctor's office, or you're going to be sitting somewhere where you need some time, because you're going to want to delve into these stories and you're going to want to just have a good time. And there's stories all over the spectrum, and they all have some element of time manipulation. In your case, you wrote not just time, but space. When she delves into that, she does have an element of time happening here. But if I gave you much more than that, I'll be spoiling the story for you. So I'm just going to encourage you, dear listener, to pick up your copy of A Time for Everything. Now, Sarah, in the last moments we have left, what are some other projects you're working on?
Oh, goodness. I'm working on another short story that I wrote after this one called Ash Island. And it's done, but I'm actually going to publish it this spring. And I wrote it for just one of my best friends. And it's about a character that gets shipwrecked on Ash Island. And she's a strong Christian, and yet her life, it all just crumbles apart. And so she's grappling with, why is this happening? And the neat thing about this project is that my best friend's daughter, who I wrote this book for is doing the illustrations for me. And she's also graduating this daughter. It's going to be her last child to graduate out, and she'll be an empty nester. And so this is just a love project I'm working on right now. And I'm just so excited about it. I'm so
So you
excited.
write for people and to encourage them, correct?
I really do that a lot. That's how it's begun. My fiction book, The Quickening, is just a speculative fiction modern day story with a old, it's like a split timeline, so it's a lot different. It's written for a very broad audience, and when I see one person grappling with something, I know it's something a lot of people are grappling with, and I like to address it fictionally. Generally, that's what I like to do.
Sounds like a good thing because then people can go, oh, you understand. And some people don't really understand the power of fiction. They don't understand just how powerful it is because you can have that distance sometimes from your own problems. And it can
Yeah.
help you in really interesting ways. Like in your story, A Time to Tear, Mary Rose actually goes through a transformation, but she can't get there unless something is torn, like you said earlier in our broadcast. So, dear listener, make sure you go ahead, pick up your time, A Time for Everything, available on Amazon.com in ebook, paperback, and hardcover. Sarah, thank you so much for being with me on the show today. Really enjoyed having you. Dear listener, thank you for joining us for this special edition of The Right Stop. You have a wonderful, absolutely glorious, blessed day, and God bless.